Hi, and welcome to my true crime channel. My name is Ansu, and today I want to talk about a case that I covered quite recently on my Finnish channel and that I've not seen that much coverage about on YouTube. And this one is an American true crime case and is often referred to as a case of an evil twin that wanted to kill the good one and take over their life. And to me, that sounds like a plot from a TV show, and it sounds very clickbaity, but it did work because it grabbed my attention and it made me want to look into this myself. But I have to say that after finishing the research for this video, I don't think it's that simple. If you've been watching true crime content for a longer time now, you know that sometimes evil people are born and sometimes they're made. And I would actually love to hear your opinion at the end of the video, what you think caused the horrible, all-consuming hatred between the Han twins. But before we get fully into it, if you like these true crime videos and you'd like to support my channel, you can like, subscribe, and ring the bell. That would all help out a lot. But now, let's get into today's video. Okay, so to begin with, we need to travel back in time to 1996 to the city of Irvine, which for my non-American friends is located in Orange County, California. And I always like to get a feel of the location where the crimes I cover happen. And I was actually surprised to find out that Irvine is considered to be a very safe and good place to live. And this is apparent from the titles it's awarded each year. And in 2021, for example, it won the title of the safest city of its size in America for the 16th consecutive year. Irvine was already known for being a safe place to live in 1996, so it was no wonder that 4 young Asian American women, Angie, Helen, Shelley, and Sunny, wanted to live there. Due to the area's popularity, rent was a little bit higher, so I'm assuming that the only way these women could afford to live there was to share an apartment together. On the afternoon of Wednesday, November 6th, only 3 of the women were home, and each of them were doing their own thing. Angie was getting ready for school, Sunny had stayed up late the night before and was still sleeping, and Helen was enjoying her day off. It was a completely normal day until around 2 in the afternoon when Helen and Angie heard knocking at their front door. None of the women were expecting anyone, but curious to see who it was, Angie went to open the door and saw a 16-year-old teenage boy standing there holding a stack of women's magazines. The boy seemed a little bit nervous, but asked if Helen or any of her roommates would be interested in buying some, but Helen politely refused and closed the door. About an hour later, around 3 o'clock, Helen was sitting on the living room couch playing some Nintendo, and Sunny, who had now woken up, was taking a shower. Angie had already left for school, so Helen and Sunny were the only ones at home. And this is when someone knocked on the door again, and Helen, who was probably irritated by the constant interruptions, paused her game and went to see what was up. This time, there were 2 teenage boys standing behind the door, 16-year-old Yoshi, and behind him the same boy from earlier, and his name was Archie. These boys were really pushy with their sales tactics, and they asked again if Helen or her roommates would like to buy some magazines from them. But when Helen tried to refuse and close the door, the boys pushed past her into the apartment. And everything happened so fast that before Helen could react, Archie had pulled out a pistol and was pressing the barrel into Helen's temple, telling her to shut up and sit on the floor. She was told that nothing bad would happen if she kept quiet and followed their instructions. Obviously, Helen was now scared for her life and didn't make a sound and remained still while Yoshi bound her hands and feet with duct tape. While this was happening in the living room, Sunny had just gotten out of the shower and was alarmed to hear angry male voices coming from inside the apartment. She could hear Helen pleading for her life and immediately realized that at least one person had broken in. She knew she had to act fast and remembered that she had left her cell phone on her bed and her bedroom was right across from the bathroom, and she managed to sneak in there, grab her cell phone, and quickly return to the bathroom and dial 911. Sunny told the operator in a whisper that a man had broken into their apartment and that a roommate was being raped. She asked them to hurry, but when the operator tried to ask for more information, the call was disconnected. Sunny thought that she had locked the bathroom door, but while she was still on the phone, Archie pushed the door open and pointed a gun at her, asking if she was talking to the police. Sunny lied, saying that she had only called her friend, and for some reason, maybe because cell phones weren't as common as they are today, and maybe Archie didn't know how to use them, that's my guess, he didn't check to see if Sunny was telling the truth, and instead he took her at her word and dragged her out of the bathroom, throwing her onto her bedroom floor. While Archie was busy with Sunny, Helen had managed to untie her hands and feet, and she ran to the front door trying to escape, but Yoshi was able to stop her. Angered by Helen's escape attempt, Archie and Yoshi threatened to kill her right there and then, but for some reason they didn't. But now both women were well and truly terrified and did what they were told to do. Yoshi and Archie proceeded to drag both women into the bathroom where Sunny had taken a shower not even 10 minutes earlier. They forced both women into the bathtub and started tying them up with duct tape. While this was happening inside the apartment, a dark blue Mustang waited in the parking lot outside where Sunny's twin sister, 22-year-old Gina Hahn, was sitting behind the wheel. Gina had driven all the way from San Diego to Irvine earlier that day with her teenage friends Archie and Yoshi. She had given the boys very clear instructions: break into the apartment, find her sister Sunny, and tie her up so that she could then come in and kill her. Gina had been dreaming about this day for quite some time. Everything was going according to plan, and the thought that her sister would no longer be able to ruin her life made her almost giddy with excitement and happiness. Soon it would all be over, and she could live the life that Sunny had stolen from her all these years. She could assume Sunny's identity and use her credit cards and drive her BMW that she had been so envious of. This would be a fresh start for her, and nothing could stop it from happening. For now, all she had to do was wait until one of the boys gave her the signal to come inside. But before I tell you how the story ends, I should tell you a little bit more about the backgrounds and life events of these twin sisters that led to such an intense mutual hatred that Gina would go as far as attempting to kill her sister. Sunny and Gina Hahn were born on April 4th, 1974 in South Korea in the city of Incheon to parents, and I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong, Yoon Heo and Boon Yoon Kim. Shortly after they were born, the parents divorced, leading to the children being separated. Gina went to live with her father, and Sunny stayed with her mother. And for the first years of their lives, the girls didn't have any contact at all. At this point, the girl's father decided that he no longer wanted to take care of Gina and returned her to live with her mother. And in my opinion, this is probably the first time Gina must have felt abandoned, as both her mother and her sister were not familiar people to her, and her dad, basically her entire world, just all of a sudden decided he didn't want her anymore and dropped her off at her mother's, never to be seen again. Over the years, she obviously got used to her new living arrangement, but I'd be surprised if this sudden abandonment hadn't affected her at all. And all I know is that this wasn't the last time she would feel this way, because she would be abandoned over and over again, leading to her developing some severe attachment issues. Although the girls had been kept apart for 3 years, Boon Kim had noticed that the girls had a special bond with each other. She has later alleged that if one of the twins fell ill, the other one would also fall ill a few days later, and they would wind up in the hospital at the same time. In the 70s in Korean families, and I'd love to know how it is these days to compare, let me know in the comments. It was common for the firstborn child to be considered special, more special than the other children. And this was very much the case with Sunny and Gina Han, even though they were identical and Sunny was born only 5 minutes before Gina. This inequality was reflected in the way Boon Kim treated them, and she always put Sunny first in everything. And Gina was expected to accept this without complaint. It must have been very difficult for Gina to understand why she was inferior to her sister, especially at such a young age, and this must have affected the development of her self-esteem in a negative way. Boon Kim was not a good mother regardless. She herself had a lot of unresolved childhood trauma, as she had grown up during a war and her father had left her mother and their 6 children when they were small, running away with a younger woman. Boon Kim's mother was left to take care of the children alone, and I cannot even begin to imagine what a difficult task that must have been for a single mother in South Korea at the time. Boon Kim was likely to have been deprived of care herself, and there's a good chance her own neglect made it difficult for her to care for her own children. When Sunny and Gina turned 11, Boon Kim decided to move from South Korea to California, hoping to build a better life there. The drastic change must have been tough, not only for Boon Kim, but also her children, who had suddenly been moved to a country where the culture was completely different and foreign. They didn't speak the language and didn't know anybody. At first, Boon Kim took the girls to stay with relatives living in Seattle while she tried to find a home and a job in California, essentially trying to settle down so that she and the girls would have a place to live and she could support all of them independently. A year after the move, Boon Kim had found a job as a waitress at a casino, and Sunny and Gina flew from Seattle to California to live with their mother. However, soon after this, the family's life began a downward spiral. Boon Kim had many short relationships with different men, and while working at a casino, she also developed a significant gambling problem, leaving her unable to pay her rent or even feed the girls. In the worst of times, she would gamble for several days in a row, while the girls, who had no local support network and who were still learning the language, were home alone. Allegedly, things weren't much better when Boon Kim was at home, and the girls have said that their mother had terrible mood swings that sometimes escalated to violence. And according to one of the sources, Gina has said that Sunny was better at calming their mother down, and that's why Gina would often be the one to get the worst of it. Eventually, Boon Kim had racked up so much gambling debt that she and the girls were threatened with immediate eviction. And with few good options for getting the money that she needed to clear her debts, she decided to contact a distant relative who lived in the town of Campo near the Mexican border. This family included Father James and his Korean-born wife Sonia and their 2 children. Boon Kim told James about her situation and asked him for a sizable loan. But James, who must have realized that it wasn't very smart to give a gambling addict a large sum of money, said that if Boon Kim was unable to take care of the girls, she was welcome to bring them to live in Campo. James and his family offered to care for them and to enroll them at a local school, and Boon Kim, who probably saw no other option, agreed to this arrangement. This was the beginning of the most serene and stable period of Sunny and Gina's life. Their new family welcomed the girls with open arms and took care of them like they were their own children. And for the first time in their lives, the girls had 2 responsible adults taking care of their basic needs, and they could focus on normal teenage girl stuff like school, their social lives, and so on. During this period, Boon Kim was not in contact with the girls at all, and considering her past behavior, I don't even know if the girls really expected more, All the same, her absence must have still been deeply hurtful. And I think it's worth pointing out here that they were abandoned by a parent again, and this likely had a profound effect on both of them. In Campo, the girls went to study at Mount Empire Junior Senior High School, and they studied really hard. Both of them were eager to succeed and were determined to learn the language as quickly as possible. They even used to carry an English-Korean dictionary around with them in the hope of speeding up the process. Since the first time, the girls' lives were now about more than just getting by. Their true characters also began to emerge more clearly. Sunny was the more social one of the two. She was more confident and made friends quickly, but Gina, on the other hand, was more quiet and withdrawn, finding it much harder to make friends of her own. Sunny was also more confident in trying new things. She was the first to get her driver's license, a job, and a boyfriend, while Gina watched from the sidelines and in her own time followed suit. Gina felt that she was always one step behind Sunny, and this was frustrating to her, as she had always felt that she was somehow less than her sister, probably because their mother had treated them that way. School was the only thing Gina felt she had a shot at beating her sister at, and being better than Sunny became almost an obsession for her. If Sunny got an A from an exam, Gina had to get an A+, and this competitive spirit led to both girls getting straight A's in everything, which greatly impressed their teachers. How was it possible that two girls who spoke English as a second language could do better than anyone else in their class? It seemed like they were exceptionally smart and would go on to do really well in life. Although on the outside it looked like the girls liked each other, their intense competition started to drive them apart. When the girls spent time with one another, they fought bitterly, and over time these fights got worse and worse. Gina has later said that they fought constantly and would say the nastiest, most hurtful things to one another, and that these fights often got physical to the point of trying to strangle each other. Around this time, Sunny had started to feel very upset about Boon Kim's decision to abandon them, and according to one source, she had written an angry letter to her mother, but her aunt Sonia had found it and didn't allow her to send it. And Sunny was extremely upset about this and moved out to live with her then boyfriend, and Gina was forbidden from going to see her. Despite this, Gina would smuggle food to Sunny, indicating that even though the girls fought often and shared an intense rivalry, there was love there, and their relationship was more complex than it appeared. At the end of the senior year, the girls had done so well that they were named co-valedictorian, which was an incredible achievement considering how difficult their lives had been up to this point. Unfortunately, however, even though the girls had worked extremely hard and excelled at school, they had plenty of issues. One of their relatives has actually said that she believed that the abandonment affected them in such a way that neither of them could distinguish their needs from their desires, and therefore their desires took over both of them. After high school, everyone thought that the girls had a great future ahead of them. They were clearly smart enough to do well anywhere, but to everyone's surprise, only Sunny wanted to go on to study at university. She had applied to Laverne University in California and had received a full scholarship there, which covered all tuition fees as long as she could keep up with her courses. Gina, on the other hand, didn't want to continue student life and began working as a waitress. She also applied for an American citizenship at this time. After that, she decided to apply for the Air Force and moved to Texas to begin basic training in May '94. However, a month into basic training, Gina realized that it wasn't actually what she wanted after all. She didn't like the discipline and started to think of ways that she could leave the service. At first, she lied to the commanding officer that her father was seriously ill and needed her, but this didn't work and she wasn't allowed to leave. at the time, the United States Armed Forces had a don't ask, don't tell rule, meaning that a person belonging to a sexual minority could serve on the condition that they didn't disclose their sexual orientation to anyone. Gina then thought that if she told everyone that she was a lesbian, she would be discharged immediately, but this didn't work either, and she was actually threatened with prison. Frightened by the prospect of serving jail time, Gina contacted an adult she had known in Campo. Her name was Charlene, and Charlene had worked at Gina's high school and had also lived next door to her Campo family. Gina told this woman about the mess she was in, and Charlene called her commanding officer, and somehow she was able to get her out without consequences. Relieved, Gina moved back to Campo, but now she was feeling like a complete failure. The one time she had tried to do her own thing and make it on her own, she had failed. In the meantime, Sunny had begun her studies at Laverne, but soon discovered that she had a completely different background to most of the other students. Although Sunny had great social skills and was good at getting to know new people, she felt that she didn't quite fit in with her new peers. Most of her friends were from wealthy Californian families, and Sunny felt that she was much poorer than the other students, and this really got to her. She decided that, okay, even though she didn't have wealthy parents, she could pretend she did. And she leased a BMW and began to spend large sums of money on expensive designer clothes. And her life looked perfect from the outside, and Gina, who watched her sister's seemingly successful and lavish lifestyle from the sidelines, believed that everything was as it appeared to be. Sunny's success actually made Gina feel even worse about her own situation, but maybe she would have felt differently if she had known the truth of things. Sunny had become an exotic dancer in a town that was considered to be pretty sketchy and quite dangerous, and this meant that she had to work until the early hours of the morning, and as a result, her schoolwork and attendance started to suffer. During this time, she also stole from one of her wealthy friends, and she actually took her credit card and went on a shopping spree, spending $1,300 on designer clothes. And when she was caught, the only explanation she could give was, "Oh, you were so wealthy, I didn't think you'd mind." Her friend ended up pressing charges against her, and as punishment for the theft, Sunny received parole and had to pay fines, meaning that she remained free if she didn't commit more crimes during the parole period. Sunny continued to work as an exotic dancer, and this began to have a negative effect on her studies. She was constantly tired from staying up late, which made it really hard to concentrate during lectures, and she also didn't have much time to study. Eventually, she began to skip classes, and after studying at the university for only 3/4 of a year, she had fallen so far behind that she lost her scholarship and was no longer able to afford the tuition fees. She had to drop out of school, and when everyone found out about her stealing, she lost her new friends as well. And at the time, she also had a boyfriend, and he also dumped her. So while this was happening with Sunny, all the way back in Campo, Gina was planning her next move. After getting out of the Air Force, she decided that she wanted to find a job, get her own place, and essentially become independent. She ended up getting a job as a waitress in a casino in San Diego and rented a flat near the town center. And despite having witnessed her mother's descent into gambling addiction, this was not enough to deter Gina from following in her footsteps. She was hoping to advance from a waitressing position to a blackjack table dealer and started taking the required courses. At first, Gina enjoyed her work. She got to know her coworkers and spent time with them after work in the nearby bars. But everything changed when Gina tried gambling for the first time. That day, she had finished her shift and was waiting for the other coworkers to finish theirs so they could go out. And while waiting, she decided to try her luck. Eventually, when her coworkers got off and asked her to come with them, she was already completely hooked and ended up staying whilst the others left to enjoy their night out. And from this day on, she was addicted. And at first, she only gambled her tips, but soon she was spending all her money on it. And then when that was used up, she took out credit cards and loans and gambled them away too. In early 96, Gina was so badly in debt that she couldn't see a way out of the situation anymore and attempted suicide by taking a handful of sleeping pills and washing them down with booze. And I don't really know how this resolved, whether Gina herself called for help or if someone found her in bad shape. But whatever happened, in January 96, she ended up in the emergency room in La Mesa, where she was nursed back to health. Gina called her Uncle James from the hospital and asked him to pick her up. And when they were both in the car, James had asked Gina why she had tried to commit suicide. And Gina had said that she felt that her whole world was crashing down around her, that she was completely alone, and that no one cared about her. James has later said that he didn't think Gina had actually wanted to end her life because she hadn't taken enough pills for that to happen, but he believed that it had been Gina's way of asking for help. After this incident, Gina went back to live with her Campo family again, and while she was there, she started stealing. At first, she stole from her friends and forged checks, but when this money was used up, she ended up stealing from the family as well. And in April 1996, James noticed that his safe had been broken into and that his credit cards, a company checkbook, and his personal checkbook were missing. He immediately contacted his bank and found out that Gina had managed to steal $20,000 from the company account and $15,000 from his personal account. And James was understandably very hurt and must have felt that Gina had taken advantage of him and his good nature, betraying his trust. He had taken Gina in to live with his family when she had nothing else. He had treated her like his own daughter. He had taken care of her needs and let her move back in with him and his family on multiple occasions during her early adult life. And this was his reward. He saw no other option but to press charges against Gina. And in my opinion, it says quite a lot about Gina's character that during this time she had also stolen from Charlene, the woman who had managed to get her out of the Air Force. So it clearly didn't matter to her who she stole from. She didn't have any loyalty to anyone. It seemed like she didn't care about anyone. Gina was arrested, and at her trial, she received 10 days in jail and 3 years of probation. And she was also ordered to repay the money she had stolen, but I don't know if they ever got the money because she was basically broke. Sunny, on the other hand, was trying her best to get on with her life. She had tried to continue her studies at Cypress College, but for some reason, it didn't go very well, and she decided to just focus on work. She ended up leaving the dancing job and moved into an apartment in Placentia, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, and got a new job as a receptionist. And soon after, she received a phone call from Gina. Gina had just been released from prison after completing her 10-day sentence, and having nowhere else to go, she decided to ask her sister for help. They hadn't been in contact for years, and now both remembered how well they had done in high school when they'd been together. And after hearing about Gina's situation, Sunny invited Gina to live with her. And Gina, who had nothing else to do and nowhere else to go, gladly accepted the offer. Both thought to themselves that maybe they were meant to be together, that maybe if they pushed each other like they had done in high school, they would be able to succeed in life again. For the first 2 weeks, things seemed to go well, and they got along fine. But soon after, Sunny started to get annoyed that Gina didn't respect her property at all. Gina was now used to stealing from others, and if she wanted something, she felt like she had the right to take it. Gina also felt that what was Sunny's was also hers, and used Sunny's clothes, money, and car as she pleased without asking permission. She didn't care if Sunny needed her car because for her, her own needs were much more important, and she didn't understand why Sunny would get upset with her. They fought constantly, and often these fights got physical, and the neighbors were used to having to call the police when their fighting got out of hand. During one particularly bad fight, Sunny threw a phone at Gina, breaking her nose, and this made Gina so angry she threatened Sunny, saying that she could get her in a lot of trouble. She actually had found out that there was an arrest warrant for Sunny, but Sunny, I guess, didn't know about this or didn't believe it and went straight to the police station to check if her sister was lying to her. And it actually turned out it was true, and she was arrested on the spot. I don't know what this arrest warrant was for, but she ended up having to stay in jail for a few days. Now, while Sunny was in jail, Gina got a chance to experience what it was like to live Sunny's life, drive her car, shop with her credit cards, and basically live the life that she had always dreamed of. She took Sunny's cell phone, her driver's license, her credit cards and debit cards, and the keys to her car, and used them as she pleased. When Sunny was then finally released from jail and she returned home, she realized what Gina had done, and she was very angry. She decided to press charges against Gina, knowing full well that this would likely lead to her arrest and return to jail. I guess Gina had breached her parole conditions by leaving San Diego without permission and had once again fallen into the same habits, committing similar crimes to the ones she had been convicted for previously. Gina was arrested shortly after the crime was reported and was sentenced to 6 months in prison. Gina was furious about her imprisonment. She obviously lacked the capacity to understand that the prison sentence was a result of her choices and actions, but rather felt that everything was her sister's fault. In her mind, it was just Sunny making her life difficult, and during her captivity, the resentment towards her sister grew stronger and stronger. In spite of her anger, Gina tried to contact Sunny from prison and asked her to bring her clothes and her driver's license to her, but Sunny refused. She didn't want anything to do with her sister anymore, and Gina's fellow inmates have actually later said that she seemed almost obsessed with Sunny. She didn't talk about anything but her sister, and slowly her hatred towards Sunny led to a desire for revenge. And she spoke very openly about wanting her sister dead. At some point during her incarceration, Gina was allowed work furlough, which meant that she was allowed to leave prison for hours at a time. On October 27th, during an evening off, she decided that she would not return to prison and arranged a ride to a particularly rough area of San Diego. While Gina was on the run, Sunny had moved again, this time to the lovely city of Irvine, where she shared an apartment with 3 other women. Gina had called Sunny after leaving prison, but Sunny was done with her and hung up. She didn't want to see Gina anymore and just wanted to live a quiet, normal life and focus on work. Gina, who again had nowhere to go, ended up staying in a halfway house in downtown San Diego, and while there she was speaking very openly about her desire to kill her sister and asked around to see if anyone would be willing to do it for her. She talked one woman into going with her to collect her stuff from her sister's place, and as soon as they got there, Gina tried to convince her to help her kill Sunny. This woman got really angry and threatened to beat her up if she didn't immediately turn around and drive her back home. Finally, Gina met 2 teenage boys, 16-year-old Archie Bryant and 15-year-old Jonathan Sarayath, who went by the name of Yoshi. Gina was still looking for someone who could off her sister, and when Archie showed her a bullet wound in his leg, she realized that this boy would probably have access to guns, and she asked him if he could get her one, saying that she needed one to protect herself. It didn't take long for Archie to get her a Derringer pistol, I don't know how to say it, for $60, and shortly after this, Gina asked Archie to accompany her for a visit to her sister's house in Irvine, telling Archie that she wanted to pick up some of her belongings. And she also asked Archie if he had any friends he could bring with him on the trip. Gina told him that her sister was involved with some pretty bad people and that she needed them for protection, offering them both $100 for the help. Archie talked Yoshi into going with him, and on November 6th, the boys got into Gina's car and started driving towards Irvine. They stopped at a store on the way and bought Pine Sol, garbage bags, and one potato, and this potato was to be used as a silencer. When they got to the area where Sunny now lived, they drove into the parking area outside her flat, and Gina told the boys her true intentions. Archie and Yoshi have later claimed that they were a bit scared of Gina and only pretended to go along with her plan, never intending to follow through. But of course they would say that after the fact. They likely would have said anything they thought that would get them off the hook, so I don't know. I guess the only thing that really matters is what they did next. They ended up driving to a convenience store where Gina bought a bunch of women's magazines, and the plan was that Archie would pretend to be a magazine's salesman and would go to knock on Sunny's door to check if she was home and who else was with her. When they got back at around 2 in the afternoon, Archie took the magazines and knocked on the door, but when Sunny's roommate Angie opened the door, he wasn't able to tell if she was Sunny or not and got back into the car. After that, he went to knock on the door again, but the women didn't answer, so they left to eat and came back an hour later, and now Yoshi and Archie went together and forced their way into the apartment. As you probably remember from the beginning, Sunny had been in the shower during all of this, but managed to call 911 just before Archie found her. Luckily, the nearest police station was a little less than a mile away from their apartment, so it took the police only a few minutes to arrive. At this point, both Sunny and Helen were gagged and bound sitting in the bathtub. Archie told Yoshi to go outside and tell Gina that the job was done, and at this point, Sunny realized who was behind the attack. Yoshi went outside, and as he was walking towards Gina's car, the cops pulled up. Inside the apartment, Archie had also heard the police coming and quickly started untying the two women, asking them to tell the police that nothing bad had happened and that the whole thing had just been a joke. Gina had actually talked to the police outside, and when she realized things were not looking too good for her, she and Yoshi left, leaving Archie behind. They started driving towards the Mexican border, and an hour later, they were spotted at a bank in Laguna Beach, where Gina withdrew $5,000 from Sunny's bank account using her driver's license as an ID. A few hours later, they stopped again, this time at a Nissan dealership in San Juan Capistrano, where Gina tried to buy a sports car, again using the stolen ID. From what I understood, she had tried to get a loan in Sunny's name, but back then, credit checks took at least a day to clear, and she couldn't wait so long, so they ended up leaving empty-handed. Next, they drove to a car rental near San Diego Airport, where Sunny had rented the Mustang she was now driving. Unfortunately for them, a San Diego police patrol car was waiting for them, and both Gina and Yoshi were arrested. Gina did try to convince the police that she was actually Sunny and even showed them Sunny's driver's license, but the cops were not fooled. Gina was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, 2 counts of burglary, 2 counts of false imprisonment, and 1 count of convicted felon in possession of a firearm, and Archie and Yoshi were tried as co-conspirators. The case and trial attracted a lot of media attention, and Sunny was contacted by multiple TV channels and newspapers for a comment or an interview. And she actually saw this as an opportunity to make money and openly admitted this in court. What I thought was actually quite interesting is that when the girl's mother found out about what had happened, it seemed like she took Gina's side in all of this. She contacted the local Korean community, and they decided to join forces to defend Gina, demanding that the charges should be dropped. I don't know much about Korean culture, but my sources said that their view was that fighting with siblings is part of Korean culture. Therefore, it was fine. The pressure from her mom and her community eventually convinced Sunny to drop the charges, but it was too late. It wasn't up to her to decide if what happened was wrong. Plus, she wasn't the only victim. There was Helen too. When the trial began, Gina denied wanting to have her sister killed, and Archie and Yoshi's defense lawyers also said that the boys had never intended to actually kill either one of the women. The fact that the police had found the gun that Archie had used to threaten both Sunny and Helen, and that the safety was off, did however indicate that at least Archie hadn't been too worried about pointing a loaded gun at either one of them. Sunny was the star witness for the prosecution, so everyone was bewildered when, on the third day of her testimony, she didn't show up. When the police went to look for her, they found her looking unusually disheveled, slurring her speech, and almost unable to walk. And she confessed that she had had a huge argument with her mother the night before and had bought 3 boxes of sleeping pills and had taken them all. And it's crazy to me that she was still brought to the court in this condition, and after everyone saw that she was in really bad shape, she was then taken to hospital. The trial ended on November 20th, 1997, and it took the jury 10 hours to deliver the verdict. Gina Hahn was found guilty of all charges, and she was sentenced to 26 years in state prison. 3 days after the verdict, Gina attempted suicide. I've been wondering how she got the pills to do it, and I think that over the week she must have been complaining about pain and then had been given paracetamol, which she then had saved in case she wanted to take them all at once and end it all. Gina ended up surviving the attempt. As for the teenagers who carried out Gina's plan, well, Yoshi made a deal with the prosecutor and he got away with only 8 years in prison, only serving half of it. Archie, on the other hand, didn't want to make any deals and he received a 16-year prison sentence, ultimately serving 14. For a long time, Gina was adamant that she hadn't wanted to kill her sister, but many years later, she finally confessed. She said that she had once hated her sister and wanted her to die. She said that she had felt that her sister abandoned her, just like her mother and father had, and that Sunny became the target of all the anger that should have been directed somewhere else. During her time in prison, Gina focused on studying and graduated with a degree in social and behavioral sciences, and has said that studying helped her understand how much she had hurt Sunny. And she also felt very guilty about how her actions had affected Sunny's life in the long term. In August 2018, after having been imprisoned for around 20 years, Gina applied for parole. Sunny supported Gina's release, but the prosecutor's office was completely against it, saying that Gina was still a very manipulative and dangerous person. She had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and hadn't received any treatment, and they believed that she was still the same person and that this could be proven by the fact that while in prison, she had managed to manipulate men into donating large sums of money to her. And Gina had actually done exactly that. She had several male pen pals, one of whom was British, and this British man had donated $100,000 to Gina only after a year of writing to her. And some of the other men had offered Gina jobs or apartments and smaller amounts of money. In the end, Gina's parole application was accepted and she was let out. And what she's doing now, well, I don't know. As for Sunny, after the attempted murder, she became kind of like a minor celebrity as the case had gotten a lot of media attention. It was hard for her to accept that her sister had really wanted to kill her, and after the trial, when she appeared in several television interviews, she tried to convince others that her sister had not intended to kill her. According to one source, she later changed her mind and started to believe that Gina had been serious about wanting to take her life, and as a result, became deeply depressed. I don't know how she's doing these days either, but I hope she's been able to move past this and build a life of her own. I also don't know if the sisters have had any contact with each other, but one source has alleged, and I don't know if this is true, that their mother, Boone Kim, has been by Gina's side and has said that Sunny is dead to her. That's pretty cruel. So in the end, I want to give my own opinion about this case. So I believe that both Sunny and Gina had a really tough upbringing that caused both of them to develop negative traits such as inability to regulate their emotions and maybe some unhealthy attachment styles. And I also feel like they didn't really know right from wrong. And what I mean by this is I feel like neither one of them thought that what they did when they stole from people, when they did horrible things, they didn't think that that was so bad. And the reason why I think so is because, for example, in the court, when they were talking about the things that they did and the way they fought, neither one of them seemed to be embarrassed or ashamed about the whole thing. They just talked about it kind of casually, which to me looks like they didn't really think it was that bad. I don't know. I'm obviously not excusing either one of their behavior. And obviously, Gina, I think going to prison was the right thing for her. Like, she was completely out of control. But I also cannot help but feel bad for the young Gina and Sunny. And who knows if their life would have turned out differently if they had, for example, different parents. I also feel bad for Sunny. I mean, imagine if someone attempted to murder you and then your entire community and your family would rally behind the killer, like the person who tried to kill you. If that happened to me, I think I would feel pretty worthless. Like, my life didn't matter and my safety didn't matter. But those are just my opinions, and I'd love to know what you think about this case, what you think caused all of this. And I guess thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.